everyone, and welcome to the Communitech Data Hub workshop for an introduction to IoT. My name is Vladimir, and I'm part of the Communitech team. A few housekeeping notes. First, a reminder that this session is being recorded, so it can be shared at a later date for companies to view and refer back to. I'll ask that you please keep your microphone on mute while others are presenting today. This session is designed to be interactive, and you will have opportunities to ask questions throughout. I would ask that you use the raise hand feature by clicking on the reactions button below, then click raise hand. The presentation component of this session will carry us through about 3 p.m. today, and the presenters have kindly offered to hang around afterwards to continue the conversation with you and answer any additional questions you may have. So if you're able to and have any additional questions, you will also have the opportunity to do so between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. today. Online, you can find us at communitech.ca/data. In terms of what we do at the Data Hub, through our services, we help companies innovate with data, and this can mean data labeling projects, mentorship around data, or funded projects with access to up to $50,000 in funding. Visit communitech.ca/data for more information. I'd like to thank our sponsors today, Encore, for supporting our advanced technology platform and making the Data Hub workshop possible. Encore is a partnership made possible in part by the funding from the Canadian government and the provincial governments of Quebec and Ontario. In Ontario, Encore is coordinated by the Ontario Centre of Innovation. Today's speakers are Gurminder Kandola and James Colvin. Gurminder is the CTO at Datanaya. He's also the former CTO at Deeply, Audiobooks.com, FanExchange, and Viafora, where he gained a deep understanding of how to effectively merge internal governance and security with real-time data applications to create an ultimate end-user experience. James is the data architect at DataStax, where he works with enterprises to plan projects and discover value with their technology. So from architecture and capacity planning to load testing and validation, to application development, optimization, and automation, James is passionate about helping users and enterprises succeed with Apache, Cassandra, and DataStax. Now I'll hand it off to Gurminder for the first part of the workshop. Gurminder, you're still on mute.
Yeah, can everybody see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay.
There we go, I can see your screen now.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure I get all the logistics straight first. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for sharing this afternoon with us. The primary goal today is going to be to give you an understanding of IoT, what's happening in the IoT industry, where we can see it going in the future, and then go into an actual example of IoT at its best in a traditional industry today. So let's jump right into this then. So from an agenda perspective, I think I've gone over most of the elements here, but looking at IoT and the implementation of 5G, how is that going to affect us in the future? And then also looking at how companies are looking at IoT initially and maybe perhaps a little worried about getting into this journey. And we'll look at some of the obstacles there as well. And then finally finish off with a use case in the fleet industry and to give you a little bit more context of how easy this can be implemented with a little bit of planning in advance. So I'll dive right into this then. So when we look at IoT, it's very important for us to define what IoT actually means. And I found this from Gardner, and it's pretty well used. And so I thought I'd share it with the team here, but it's Internet of Things is a network of physical objects that contain embedded technology to communicate and sense or interact with their internal states or the external environment. So a device that can that has a smarts to it that can sense things around it and report back from that. So I thought that was a really good explanation of what IoT is and what we're really talking about today. Now, the evolution of IoT in industry typically has been, adopted around operational improvement. So we're a company where we're looking to um, adopt an IoT technology to measure the temperature of something that needs to be consistent. Let's say these massive kilns in a manufacturing organization. So maybe we used an IoT device just to simply measure the temperature in one of these kilns. And that sense of operational improvement, the efficiency we gain from somebody not having to go in there and actually measuring it, that is how traditionally IoT devices have been situated in organizations. And now we're seeing a massive shift from that. Whereas adoption has come in and we're utilizing the devices and getting them to communicate back to us, especially in closed environments. Um, Now, what we're seeing is that those environments are looking to use IoT and to better user experience of some sort. So, how can we use IoT to make a better experience for, let's say, a person expecting a delivery of a parcel? Where is it? Where is it? Is it coming? Is it immediate? How do I get that information across to them very quickly, efficiently? How do I get it across to the person that I actually bought the package from so they can send it to me? All those experiences are now being enabled in real time with the advances that we have seen in the IoT world. And so what does this mean? Well, if I can now literally monitor anything, biggest thing now is if I can monitor it, I need to be able to communicate that monitoring back somewhere, and that's where 5G is kicking in. As 5G gets further and further deployed across our country and a lot others, what we're going to see is the nature of IoT devices increase, our capabilities increase on what we can do with IoT devices. Some of it for convenience, some of it for, surely commercial purposes. Either case, 5G is really moving the needle when it comes to the adoption of IoT devices. And that's what we really wanted to talk to you guys about is how the integration of these IoT and 5G is really enabling a different level of user experience, which companies need to start taking very, very seriously, especially traditional companies. So what do we notice so far? What do we notice is organizations who perhaps are in prime for an IoT environment or IoT solution to be sent out to their customers, they're not adopting IoT today. And that's something that we're realizing is happening in numbers. And there's some reasons behind it. There's threatening into IoT being this shiny little object that it's mysterious. We don't understand how it works, but in most cases, the protocols used to pull data from these devices is very similar. It's just got to be handled in a particular nature and modeled. Um, Lack of data flood. Um, the flood of data you get from an IoT device, if you're monitoring a sensor and you're sending data back in real time, that could be a lot of data, people, and that drives a level of complexity because when traditional systems start seeing that amount of data, it becomes very hard for you to manage it, and not only manage it, but more importantly, get insights from it. So again, another barrier to IoT devices is how do we handle the plethora of data that we're going to get from these devices? And that data is not sorted out, it's not organized. So how do we prep for that. Skipping compliance best practices, a lot of the times what we've seen, security and privacy implementing an IoT solution is secondary. And as horrible as that sounds, you can imagine some of these IoT devices are not capturing only personal data, but also data about my community, data about my say water flow in my city. A lot of sensitive information that I don't think we want access to everyone. And so a lot of the times when we implement IoT or we think of IoT, there is a force within in technology that will say, well, have you considered everything as far as best practices on deploying and complying with um, policies to make sure this device does what it's exactly meant to do and doesn't get in the wrong hands. Again, going further on, limited ownership of data governance. Where is that data going? What's happening with it? Am I analyzing that data? Am I using that data for good or bad? What's happening with that data? Again, a lot of questions around that. How do we organize that so we can best monetize this data and in a safe and legitimate way? There's the other challenge of adopting IoT technology is, I think traditional technologists are faced with a lot of questions that they need to ask, but they may not have all the right questions to ask in the first place as to why they should adopt this technology, and whether that's training or whether that's exposure. But we're seeing a lot of the right questions are just not being asked as to what the IoT devices can do, how can the data be stored, how can I get analytics out? And what we're seeing from that is a lot of failed projects in the past. Now, those failed projects were because primarily you're using new sensing and quick data capturing capability, and you're throwing it onto an infrastructure that was designed for transactions or one transaction at a time with data. And so how you read and analyze and do analytics on that obviously gets affected as well. So as we go down, the lack of skills and talent, like obviously everybody's trying to train, and real-time data is becoming more and more prominent with a lot of the use cases that we're involved in. The technology institutions or what have you, traditional institutions are still not teaching the right technologies as far as how to get real-time data out there, how to get it distributed, how to get it moving around. And so getting people that are trained on these technologies is becoming a harder thing to do. And the focus around data seems to be kind of daunting. Is it AI data? Am I using it for machine learning? Or what about data engineering? What does that mean? Making the smooth flow of data go through all these applications? Because that's really what IoT is expecting, right? Nice smooth flow of data that could be analyzed by a variety of systems. Again, so lack of data understanding is also a major factor, because you don't know what the data is all about and what problem it solves. I know with Communitech, and especially the Data Hub, they've introduced the concept of a data canvas, really giving you an overview of all the data elements that are ins and outs of your systems that you're building. And I think that's a fabulous way of bringing in IoT devices to complement some of those data capturing needs or disposing data needs. Waiting too long to embrace change. This is for any company out there that is sitting very pretty in the industry, hasn't been disrupted right now by an IoT device. I've been working heavily with energy providing companies. companies that are focused on building better production line quality solutions. And what I'm noticing is companies that are not embracing IoT and not evolving with it can't offer their customers the competitive advantage, and therefore, they seem to die out or end up spending a lot of money and having to do a quick change and a drastic change very dramatically. So the easy process into it, it also seems to be a barrier. People are waiting still, and I don't know why. Um, IoT's complexities and how to make it simple. Well, figure out the influx of data. You're going to get a lot of data. You got to figure out what we're going to do with that data, how we're going to build science around it, what we're going to capture, what we're going to disregard, because it's a lot of data. Privacy and data sharing. We have to understand what it is that we can actually share within our systems, what we can hand out, what we can do analysis on. Very important for your customers, for yourselves, to really start to think about that. Security, obviously, you're capturing data. You want to make sure you control where that data sits and when it's in flight. IoT high potential markets. So a lot of these markets you've already seen. Wearables, a big one. Everybody's wearing a watch nowadays, and just like that, right? And one day wearables was a thing. Maybe can you imagine people wearing digital watches all day, monitoring stuff? It's happening. It's here. And so now, as you imagine these other industries, you can also imagine that this is similar type of behaviors are taking place, and adoption of new technology is enabling agriculture to monitor levels of nitrogen, let's say, in soil, or how moist the atmosphere is. So really providing agriculture competitive advantage. We're going to be looking at fleet management very soon. But water supply, we work with a water supply company that manages large amounts of sewage water for various cities, and just monitoring that data, the flow data. They're getting a lot of flow data. Now we have to be able to analyze it and articulate it. And what it's actually doing is allowing cities to build better water management systems for us, more efficient ones in new areas that are being developed. So that being said, what I thought we do now is go into more of a use case, give you an actual example of how the fleet industry has transformed over the decades, and more importantly, what is IoT doing for it, right? And so Waze IoT revolution in fleet management. So we've seen IoT being the sensors in the car, helping it automate driving. It'll be the eyes, vision AI has really helped us figure that out, gain more insights on what the vehicle is actually being used for, engine performance, how is it working over a period of time, how are the parts, how are the guarantees upholding themselves, improvement in fuel efficiency. Are we getting the gains that we need? Based on the acceleration, acceleration of a person, how does that all come into effect when it's fuel efficiency by a normal person? Predictive maintenance. We've also seen IoT devices being used to predict maintenance for vehicles. So, hey, a vehicle needs to be on the road ever so much more now than ever before with deliveries. So to keep that vehicle on the road, we have to make sure we prevent maintenance issues coming to those vehicles. IoT doing a very good job on that. I'm pointing these out because we're going to see lots of these things actually come out in our demo. So over to you, James. Take it away, sir.
Thanks very much, Gurminder. Happy to be with you guys today. What I want to do is first, I want to figure out how to share my screen. You all probably see my background. And so what I want to do here is I want to step through a example application that you could potentially build with a fleet management use case. So we're going to talk about some of the things Gurminder was bringing up about not only the insights that you can get from like a fleet of vehicles, a fleet of delivery drivers, but how we manage the amount of data, that flood of data that can come in from a fleet of vehicles, how we deal with getting it ingested, categorized properly so that we can get the proper amount of insight from it. And then being able to turn that information into actionable insights. So let's take a look at this here. This is a example application that we built here at DataStax. And it is what I want to try and illustrate to you today is some of the ways that we can both utilize sensor data that can be coming from a fleet of electric vehicles with delivery drivers that are delivering in routes. So let's take a look at my US dashboard here. So what we're seeing here are, of course, a fictitious map of delivery drivers that are en route. We're using geospatial data, so GPS-based data that can be gathered from the 5G technology and GPS technology that we all have, we carry on in our pockets nowadays. But as Gurminder was talking about earlier, how can we turn this information into a better user experience? We want to, in real time, let our customers know, hey, your package is right around the corner. Some of the biggest logistics companies in the world are giving us those options today. We'll get notifications pushed to our phone that our driver is 4 stops away, and then a few minutes later, we'll get a picture on our phone of the package that's left at our doorstep. I mean, it is phenomenal, the amount of information that we can provide to our customers through technology like IoT sensors and outfitting our applications with these functionality. It's a lot of fun. It really is. So we can determine here, kind of with a nice setup for a dashboard, the way that our drivers are able to be more efficient, how many of our vehicles are in need of service, how many are fully serviced, when we can expect to need to potentially purchase more vehicles or retire some vehicles. All of those types of metrics can be gathered just simply by using the IoT data that's coming from the machines themselves. We have some customers that do this with airplane jet engines. We monitor every bit of how the engines are operating and are able to run predictive analytics over those airplane engines to determine the service cycles and when those need to be retired and replaced. It's very, very valuable for being able to run an efficient operation. So after we kind of take a look at this dashboard here, we can begin to see that we can set up alerts for things like low battery level in a electric service vehicle, or low tire pressure can be sensed all by IoT sensors and through a 5G uplink loaded to a database like Apache Cassandra, which is purpose built and designed to be able to handle massive amounts of data being written to it. Quite literally, we have customers that are writing millions of transactions per second on Apache Cassandra and DataStax Enterprise databases, run on-premise or in the cloud or in a hybrid cloud manner. The technology behind the DataStax databases is purpose-built for this kind of velocity of data. So we can step through here and see that some of these vehicles can throw alarms. We can know that we need to send a backup vehicle or a backup driver. We can get insight about how each vehicle is performing, where the nearest charging station is located. All of these things we can generate using both the IoT sensors and the information that we have available to us about our packages and our drivers. This is all built on, we built this sample application in .NET. This is running on our database as a service called Astra. It is a fully managed Apache Cassandra database that is run in any one of the public clouds by us here at DataStax. So let's see here. I wanted to step through. We talked about the dashboard. We have created, and I know we are. It's kind of a blended audience here today, but I wanted to illustrate like we are doing all of these, all of this functionality we're demonstrating here in this particular application. We built very developer-friendly APIs for Apache Cassandra. We are using GraphQL in this particular application. Built it on .NET. We're using GraphQL API just to be able to build queries quickly, to be able to take a look at the data to get the information to build these dashboards. So from a developer perspective, this can be done in a relatively straightforward manner. Without the need to, retrain on a domain-specific language or something like that. We want to be able to get the value of these IoT sensors, the value of this data into your database, and then onto the rest of your business lines as quickly and efficiently as possible. The DataStax Astra UI and management panels are very straightforward and easy to use. If I come from the professional services side, so I was actually like hands-on spinning up Apache Cassandra databases, DataStax Enterprise databases, especially even a couple of years ago when deployment were less automated and a lot of things had to be done by hand. It's so much fun to me to see how far we have progressed with the ability to run an Apache Cassandra cluster as a managed database as a service in any one of the cloud vendors. Taking the time needed to deploy a Cassandra cluster that can handle thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands transactions per second, deploying them with a few clicks of a UI and a few minutes of spinning up some cloud instances is phenomenal. I love it. All of these things have built-in dashboards for the database itself, so you can monitor performance. You can hook the database into the monitoring tools that your enterprise is using already. And for experienced Cassandra operators or users, if you're coming from a self-managed Cassandra instance into DataStax Astra, it's not a compliance layer. It's not an API layer. It's actually Apache Cassandra running under the hood here. We run it all on Kubernetes. We've developed an operator to deploy and run these databases for you in the major public clouds. I love this product, and I know I work for DataStax, so obviously I'm going to love it. But this is really a lot of fun to be able to deploy a database that is this powerful and scalable to run your IoT applications. So I've got a couple of things that I'll step through really quickly, and then I can turn it back over to Gurminder, and we can talk further, take some questions. I mentioned about fleet management and IoT in general. A couple of things that we see in our enterprises, and not even around IoT, but just in general, we see a couple of things happening. Especially when we're talking about the volume of data that can be generated by IoT. It can get unwieldy very, very quickly, which can lead to what we internally refer to as the TCO death spiral. Like the cost of managing this data can get out of control very quickly. Gurminder talked about it as the data flood that can catch enterprises off guard, right? We want to be able to help our customers, our enterprises who use these IoT workloads to be able to manage TCO and to solve the innovation stalemate, to be able to utilize the technology that's available to us in IoT efficiently, quickly, get it to market, get insights from the data as quickly as possible. So how do we avoid these things? From a fleet management perspective and an IoT perspective, we need to control cost optimization by modernizing legacy technologies onto technology advancements like Apache Cassandra and DataStax Enterprise and Astra. We need to optimize the performance and maintenance of our fleets or our IoT devices by running predictive analytics, running AI and ML algorithms over top of this data to get the best next action. We need to take advantage in order to solve the innovation stalemate. We need to take advantage of this, the technology that's available to us, both in IoT and 5G. Just like Gurminder was talking about, we're reading out of the same book here, right? We know that this can be a complex. It can, on the face of it, look like a complex problem to solve. But that's what we're here to do. We're here to help you guys step through how to innovate and build your applications to get the best possible return on investment from IoT and 5G. We stepped through this a little bit. Just what can 5G give us from an innovation standpoint? We can get data collection and insight and actually process the data all the way down to the edge, all the way down to the devices that are running on these vehicles themselves. We have a couple of automotive customers that we work with that their vehicle, a single vehicle, can generate literally gigs of data every day that are getting sent back to the manufacturer to run analytics on, and so on and so forth. Everything we've been talking about. It is phenomenal how much information we can get and what we can do with it in order to make our products and our user experiences better. We've talked about all of this. 5G gives us the ability to run in a multi-cloud and hybrid cloud environment to get the best flexibility, to get the best total cost of ownership out of the technology. We can utilize it for AI and ML workloads. We can get the best reliability and throughput from the network itself. And to talk about just 5G in and of itself and the monetization, if you will, of the 5G technology, it's about delivering the right data to the right place at the right time to support the right experiences, to get the best possible next action for our users, for our fleet that we're managing, for our internal customers. We need to get the data where it needs to be at the right time and get the insight from it so that we can support these experiences. So we've talked a little bit about the technology, and I mentioned Apache Cassandra, I mentioned DataStax Enterprise and DataStax Astra. That's kind of the part that I'm coming from, this foundational data stack, the data technology stack that will enable these types of IoT workloads. It needs to be based on modern technology. It needs to be developer centric. The developers need to be able to operate and innovate with speed and efficiency. That's why we have enabled a data gateway, an API gateway on top of Apache Cassandra. This is new and cutting edge. We are trying to lower the barrier of entry into technology like Apache Cassandra for today's developers, so that they're not having to relearn a domain-specific language like CQL. We want to enable not only the persistent data store in Apache Cassandra, but data streaming and stream processing. In addition to that, the amount of data, the volume of data that's generated by IoT sensors is staggering. And if we can stream that data to the data persistence layer, and even while it's in motion, begin to prepare the data for these AI and ML workloads, it just improves the overall efficiency of the process. We at DataStax, we recently, several months ago, acquired a company that is the kind of driving force behind Apache Pulsar, which is a data streaming and PubSub open source project, and then a enterprise version of that open source project. We are working very closely on the coupling, essentially, of Apache Cassandra and Apache Pulsar to deliver not only a fast data lane, but a way that we can get data quickly prepared and persisted so that we can run deep insights on that data in stream processing and then batch analytical style. All of that, it needs to be deployed on a modern infrastructure like Kubernetes. We have, I used to say Kubernetes is the future, but Kubernetes is absolutely here. And it is the standard for, it is the standard for deploying these types of applications have been deployed on Kubernetes. Kubernetes is the standard for it, even now deploying stateful workloads like databases or data streaming and persistence. This is an eye chart, I know, but this is the type of thing that we are working with our customers to build. This modern data stack that will allow you to build these like the fleet management applications, like we looked at earlier. We have resources to be able to help you put together an architecture that makes sense for your applications, so that you can get the best return on your investment from your data itself. And I've talked a little bit. This is just a little bit more specifically about the modern data stack as it relates to data stacks and Cassandra. So we are building these APIs on top of an open source project we call Stargate, which is the API gateway that will enable you to ingest all of this sensor data and persist it in Cassandra or DataStax Enterprise if you're running self-managed, or DataStax Astra, the fully managed database as a service that I was speaking about earlier, and also utilizing Apache Pulsar for not only streaming data, but beginning to prepare that data for analytical workloads, persisting it in Cassandra or Astra, and shipping it downstream to longer-term cold storage. All of these things are deployed on Kubernetes on any one of the clouds, hybrid cloud, any kind of Kubernetes-based fabric, we can deploy it, and you guys can begin to see the benefits of running your IoT workloads on Apache Cassandra. Again, this is just kind of honestly, this is a bit of architecture, right? I mean, but it's essentially this, we're trying to kind of even condense it down a little bit more to show just simply how we can build even a more straightforward tech stack that will get us the type of performance that we are talking about. I know, here it is. This is the one I was expecting to see. So we have several customers here at DataStax that are utilizing today in production these types of fleet management operations. Some of them I can say the name on publicly, and some of them I can't, so I'm just going to describe a few of them to you. One of our customers here in the United States is a logistics and shipping company that does almost exactly what I was showing you in the demo application. They're monitoring their fleets, they're monitoring the packages themselves, where the checkpoints are. They are proactively pushing notifications to the customers about when their packages are going to arrive, what packages are going to be arriving in their mailboxes. All of these things are monitored in real time. Geospatial queries, like what we were looking at earlier, show the positioning of all of the trucks. They monitored the usage, the maintenance needs of the trucks themselves. It is the epitome of a fleet management IoT use case in production right now here in the US. Norfolk Southern is another one of our enterprises. They use a very similar IoT style workload for their trains, for shipping large quantities of goods all across their railways, and monitoring in real time the movement and positioning of the trains. Similar type of functionality with Traxens, although it is based on container ships. Again, moving goods and services across large geospatial areas, trying to keep track of all of the not only the shipments themselves, but the ships and the devices that are on board. Again, a couple of other, like an actual another fleet management use case where we are monitoring in production the movement and usage of like maintenance trucks and service vehicles that will go out and service utility lines and things of that nature. Again, taking into account the miles driven, the maintenance needs of the vehicles themselves. All of these things give us the ability to manage the fleet itself, to gain the best optimization from the movements of the vehicles as much as we possibly can. These things can also be, we do a lot with kind of like best route and next best available routing. We have the ability to utilize a graph database on top of this IoT database to build routes that will be optimized even in real time, just to avoid either to avoid weather or traffic, or if we need to reroute packages through hubs that are overly busy. All of these things can be done by utilizing both IoT data and other data sources to both enrich the next best action that you can take. So I've been speed talking for a little while, so I wanted to just kind of end it with this. This is our kind of overview to you about what is available to you, what is running today for a lot of customers on DataStax Enterprise, on DataStax Astra, on Apache Cassandra, utilizing IoT sensors in fleet management, utilizing 5G technology, as we've been talking about. So hopefully this has been beneficial, helpful to you all. And I can kick it back over to Gurminder and we can take some questions in a few minutes.
Yeah, thank you for that, James. That was very well done. Yeah, is there any questions on the bridge at all?
Hey,
we may
everyone,
have done such a good job explaining things that there
might be that. Folks, if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself or use the raise hand feature there as well. I don't think we have any questions at the moment, Gurminder.
Okay, that's good. So I'm just going to share. I'm just going to share my screen again if I can.
And as I mentioned at the very beginning of the presentation, folks, we are going to stick around after 3. If you do have any questions, we'd love to hear more about your companies, any questions you may have about Cassandra and all this stuff. Just wanted to highlight that again.
Yeah, just so, okay, I'm hoping everybody can see my screen. Just wanted to end it with what's next for IoT. And so a good way to conclude today's conversation, I think. So highlight 1, McKinsey and Company estimate IoT to have an $11.1 trillion impact by 2025. We're in 2021, people. 4 years from now, $11 trillion impact. What? So it is something to look forward to. It is something that's on its way. I just wanted to highlight the seriousness of some of this stuff. Health sciences market believes the number of connected IoT devices will increase by 12% annually to reach 125 billion by 2030. Right, that's a lot of devices, and I only need one to connect me up, but that's a lot of monitoring of different things. Gartner and these guys, obviously CIOs are looking to move up. They already manage IoT devices, but the plethora and the differences between these devices are just going to increase. How are they going to manage it? How are they going to, adopt security around it? So there are concerns around that as well. So I wanted to leave you guys all with a point that this is it's evolving and it's happening really, really fast. The last point I wanted to make was Francisca's on the call, and Francisca is going to tell you guys about an upcoming event that is going to be happening very soon. So Francisca, please go ahead and do that.
Hi, everyone. So nice to speak to you all. Before I hand the presentation over to Vladimir, I just wanted to let you know that Data and AI is organizing an event that will be pretty much showcase the journey that many companies go through when digitalizing their operations. There you will be able to get exposed to solution specialists explaining how they're handling this adaptation, also learn how C-levels executives are adapting and what approaches are they taking towards the digitalization, and also maybe learn how technology companies such as DataStax are understanding big data and helping organizations move towards like more efficient and productive entities. So I invite you all to stay connected with Data and Aya's LinkedIn profile. We will be sending the event information in the coming week. So you are all invited.
Thank you very much, Francisca.
Most welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Perfect. Everyone, I wanted to highlight as well that Gurminder is a Communitech data growth coach, and he helps Communitech companies around their business processes, IT management, software development, and disaster recovery, for example. So if you are interested in growth coaching, please let me know. I'll be reaching out via email with a copy of the slides, and you'll have my contact information that way. For those of you that are local and also interested in the 5G testbed at the Data Hub, I'll be reaching out with more information about that as well. We've made the iPass application process very straightforward for companies interested in signing up for the testbed. Thank you, Gurminder and James, for your time and effort to prepare this presentation around an introduction to IoT. Thank you to you as well for taking the time for us to be to join this workshop today. We hope you found it very informative and hope that you can stick around. We'd like to hear more about your companies, any questions that you may have for Gurminder and James. We'd love to hear more about if you have questions about Cassandra, about capacity planning and all this stuff there. So let me just open things up for everyone. Does anyone have any questions? If you do, please feel free to unmute and go ahead. And you can turn on your video as well, if that would be helpful. All right. We'd love to hear more about your companies, why you signed up for this workshop, or yeah, any questions at all for Gurminder and James. Hi, Ryan. All right, let me help you mute. Hey, Ryan, the floor is yours.
Yeah. So much of this is over my head. I'm a community economic development officer out in rural British Columbia. And I joined this because we've been courted by some big data providers, TELUS being the main one, on community data. And it's not a cheap project for small rural communities like ours. It's trying to track who's here, when they're here, how long they're here, and so on. But it doesn't seem to be the best. Well, it seems to be the only option that we've looked at so far. So do you have any advice for someone or for communities, I guess, or groups of communities on how best they could make use of the IoT data available rather than going with, say, a big telco solution? Is there another option we should be looking at?
There's a lot of obviously open data sources, right? It's about the use case that you're going after. Or the telecom companies may get you real-time data and accurate data, but if you don't have a use case to apply it, kind of useless, right? And so I think I would look down, for instance, in the fleet management side, understanding behavior of drivers, let's say police officers, okay? When they need to uphold the law, but they also need to should be an example for society. So if they're parking in a parking lot across lines, right, that should take some points off their character or their online profile for driving, and So data can be used. So in that case, you could use spatial data mixed with the card data. All this is available, open source, to kind of drive that type of understanding, right? That's a very crazy use case, I know, but you could reach it, right? It's very community focused in that sense. For some communities, it'd be more serious than others, I guess. But um, it's all about how you use it. Like I was in what's it called, Banff, and not looking for bears, but there were bears, right? Trying to understand where the last bear sightings were, what trigger points they hit, and trying to get that information to me so I knew where to camp out appropriately. I think that was very valuable, but I had to get GPS data, which was available to me, plus community data, which was sightings, linking that together. So again, I think it's about the use cases. The telecoms are very good at supplying that data, especially Thales, right? Because Thales has a healthcare industry initiative. They're very well in there. I do believe they've been selling data to the banks for allowing banks to do targeted marketing because they have machines everywhere, so you could tell them what type of traffic is going past which machines and which type of shops at a physical level. So I guess I'm not answering your question, but there are just too many use cases for me to say no to your answer and answer it correctly.
And I appreciate that. And when I think of data, usually it's not available in real time, at least from what we've been dealing with. In fact, with such small census or such small communities, we have to rely on census data, which is terribly out of date, right? Every 5 years. And so that's the baseline that we have to deal with. And other creative, you mentioned Banff. So Banff has a very cool way of, pre-IoT, figuring out how many people are actually in their community by looking at park gate counts, traffic counts, and looking at their effluent to determine how many people are actually driving through or how many people are staying overnight based on bathroom usage. So that is one of those more creative indicators to determine how busy a community is. And we're trying to figure out what works for a very rural setting like that, actually more rural than Banff, with 7 separate jurisdictions, some on municipal services, some on wells and septic fields. So it's that's why TELUS or phone-based data it seems to make sense, but you rightly point out, what is the question we're asking? And that I'm not sure we really know yet. And then what are we going to do differently with that information? And those exactly. Are the 2 fundamental questions that I'm not sure, and I'm sure other communities have asked. That's why I'm asking here if you've seen a similar setting that we could perhaps learn from, rather than reinventing the wheel.
No, the ones that I've personally been involved in are more so just modernizing in the West there, right? So material handling, modernizing through IoT and things of that nature. So seeing companies modernize and use data as a form of revenue. Traditionally, they would have been just selling equipment, and now they can use the value of the data that they're creating in these mines and sell that data too. And so what I'm seeing is the innovative souls in our communities are finding ways to use data, and they're the ones who are driving innovation right now, right? For companies in communities. I don't know. I haven't had much experience. I haven't done anything for my community. I guess that kind of sucks that I haven't touched it, but something to explore. I can't give you much feedback there, man. I'm sorry.
No worries. And the only other example I'll share is maybe the more or the barcode read garbage and recycling receptacles that we've transitioned to recently. That is one way of tracking how many people are in a house or how much garbage is being used, which is really important for second homeowner heavy communities. So we have a lot of people that are only their second homes or use them as Airbnbs and other rentals. So that's another tool we haven't really explored yet, but unfortunately we're so fractured when we talk about garbage collection that it's really hard to pull together a cohesive 7 community picture. So
Yeah.
I'll leave
I
that.
think the biggest thing that I look for is you are going to get a lot of data, right? So once you go down this road, and it's valuable to understand the use case. It's equally as valuable to understand what are cost-effective solutions to pull that data. Because, for instance, I've been working with this one company. They're all on Azure Cloud. All right, it doesn't matter what cloud it's on. But over the years, they are spending so much money. It's phenomenal just to host that data. And then when I came in and I asked them, hey, that's great, you're using all this and you're spending all that. Like, what are you doing with this data? We don't know. We're saving it for a better day, or may need it in the future, or we could run these types of analytics. So why aren't you doing it now?
Yeah.
Right. And those kind of questions are going to be posed to you as well. So you're going to get a lot of data. You should also understand what you're going to do with that large amount of data, how you're going to manage your cost of that data. Right? I think those are equally as important questions as you work down this journey.
Thanks.
No worries, right?
Thanks so much, Ryan, and thank you, Raminder.
No worries.
I'm just wondering, Arlene, if you may have any questions, or Amanda as well. We'd love to hear more about your companies or any questions you may have about your industry, for example. Not to put anyone on the spot, but we'd love to hear more. So Gurminder, for me, is through the programs that I work, a lot of it is around transportation. So the I guess the future of transportation is it's very exciting, and what IoT what insights IoT can actually help uncover. But another one that's very interesting to me as well is the future of health. As you mentioned earlier, so many of us have wearables now, and there's so much data that's being gathered. And over the last year, so many of us have gotten so used to technologies, and same thing for practices there as well. I'm just wondering if you perhaps have any thoughts around what that might mean for a small practice with all the data that technically their patients would have access to. What are some of the challenges those small practices may face with helping us providing better healthcare, but also some challenges around the implementation of what needs to happen so that we can get to that point. Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, like I know with DataStax or Cassandra, Whoop is a company out in New York area, and they do health monitoring, right? Heartbeat monitoring, various vitals of your body, and help report to insurance companies, to IoT devices, and a bunch of stuff going on there. That being said, the challenge that they faced when they initially got into this was around compliance. They're collecting this data. Where is this data sitting? Where is it going? And that compliance issue is what stopped them from actually. They had the insights right there, but they couldn't use the insights. And so we had to rejig the system in order to show isolation from certain data elements for us to report against it. And that, I think, cost the company about 2 years because they didn't model the data appropriately in the first place. And just keeping a plethora of data was very costly. You can just imagine, right? They have millions of subscribers, and all of them sending large amounts of data got very expensive for them very quickly. So those are the gotchas I know.
Thank you. And yeah, you're totally right on that. Even for us, for some of our services there, we decided not to delve into the storing of any of the data just because of some of the implications that might mean. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time there. It looks like we don't have any questions there. As I mentioned earlier, I will be reaching out via email with a copy of the slides. Please let me know if you're interested in coaching or if you have any questions for Gurminder and James. I'll be happy to get everyone connected. So just a quick reminder that this workshop series is a two-part series, and we have another session on June 16 at the same time, focusing on real-time IoT analytics. So once again, thank you all very much for your time today, and I hope to see you in 2 weeks. Take care, everyone.
Bye now.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.